let's dive into this opera, exploring the music of a few sections. By the end of my brief analysis, I hope you'll gain a better understanding of what Strauss accomplished in this remarkable music. The first gesture of Salome is a sequence of 8 notes, 4 notes from the C-sharp major scale, followed by another 4 notes from the G major scale played by the clarinet. In tonal music, scales are somewhat equivalent to a collection of phonemes in a language, and so are the source material for music's capacity for communication through keys. In the common practice Western music of the 18th and 19th centuries, scales and keys are established through formulae called cadences. In common practice, one scale provides the pitches for large sections of music, if not for entire compositions. But right from the outset in Salome, Strauss forces these 2 disparate musical alphabets together, a juxtaposition separated by the tritone, the devil's interval, that signals that the world we are about to inhabit in the opera is an upending of traditional common practice and its concomitant expectations. Quite ominously, the world of Salome is dark and grotesque, an inversion, perversion, and distortion of normal reality. In a word, it's hell. After the opening scale, we hear Salome's leitmotif, set in the key of C-sharp minor. A leitmotif is a recurring melody tied to a person, object, or idea, like John Williams' Imperial March is Darth Vader's leitmotif in Star Wars. Another rising scale follows and leads into Naboth's entrance, where he sings, "How fair is the Princess Salome tonight." In this scale, one note seems out of place. The C-sharp minor scale we know sounds like this. But Strauss replaces the D sharp with a D natural, an adjustment called mode mixture that borrows this note from the more exotic and quasi-Near Eastern Phrygian scale, thus setting the scene in the distant and ancient world of first-century Judea. At Naboth's entrance, the harmony is a resonant C-sharp major chord, a sudden modal shift from minor to major that supports and almost celebrates Naboth's infatuation with Princess Salome. But Strauss doesn't establish this key and directly slides into chords that work to establish the key of C major, one semitone below the opening C-sharp key. This slinking down is the music's commentary on the reality of Naboth's love-struck state and a presentiment of the page's later warnings that terrible things will happen if he continues staring at the princess. As soon as we hear it, Salome's C-sharp key slips out of reach, a subtle foreshadowing of King Herod's first entrance, where he slips on Naboth's blood after the latter's suicide. Queen Herodias' page replies, "Look how strange the moon seems," and the harmonies parallel the strange sentiment operating outside of C major. As the page continues intoning that the moon is like a woman rising from a tomb, the harmonies grow darker and shift keys once again to what appears to be E minor. So far, none of the keys have been confirmed using cadences, and the result is an atmosphere of floating key centers, eluding stability by functioning chromatically. The chromatic scale, unlike the diatonic scales I've been highlighting so far, is a symmetrical scale, meaning that it has no primary starting or ending point, and all its constituent pitches sound equally important. That translates to the scale having no internal hierarchy and further contributes to the mysterious and shimmering opening. As if to highlight this very point, Strauss has the second violins play a descending chromatic scale as Naboth talks past the page, saying that the moon is strangely lovely and like a delicate princess whose feet are little snow-white doves. It might be dancing up there. In this moment, the most recent key, E minor, shifts to E major, another sudden modal shift from minor to major, and the opening tritone-related scale reappears, followed by Salome's leitmotif, this time shifted chromatically down a semitone to C major from its original C-sharp minor key. As the page reasserts that the moon is like a lifeless woman, still gliding slowly aloft, the harmonies again shift seemingly toward D minor, but any resolution into that key is interrupted by noise coming from the banquet hall and the first soldier's entrance, shouting, "What an uproar!" The opening lays the groundwork for understanding Strauss's musical language in this opera. He avoids establishing any one key via cadences, those well-worn harmonic formulations that give common practice music tonal and thus narrative coherence. The music, that is, follows the incongruent and unstable opening exchange between Narabath and the page. They talk past one another and occupy disparate worlds, seeing the same moon as two distinct metaphors for Princess Salome. For Narabath, the moon is lovely, lithe, and almost innocent somehow. For the page, the moon is a dead woman, an omen of what's to come. Narabath is tragically wrong and dies early as a result of his impossible and misplaced love. The page, however, is right. Salome, like death, is a static character, and she exists only to satisfy her darkest and most spontaneous desires. If there was ever a music to foreshadow the chaos of petulance, this opening is it.